Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the JRE review. It's hot as fuck today here, so I have a fan on, and hopefully it's not making too much noise in my microphone. If it is, I'll try and figure out how to delete that, but if it's just a slight hum, just know that it means that I can do this podcast without sweating constantly. Today's podcast is episode 1307, Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg is a fantastic guest to get on. You know I'm partial to any of the comedians that get on, but also more so partial to really old friends of Joe's because they get to kind of reminisce and talk about how far they've come. And I really enjoyed this one. It was very funny and not super long, so it was a good podcast. Anyway, let's start the review. Welcome to the Joe Rogan Experience Review, where each week I review every single episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. What more do you want? So they start on a tear, as you'd imagine. I mean, these guys are old friends. They've known each other for, 25, maybe almost 30 years. A long time doing comedy together in Boston. And Greg starts off, they're talking about prostitution. Prostitution. Should it be legal? Joe brought up some interesting points. He basically said that people should be able to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't hurt people. And I kind of like that. And what I'd also never really considered is, there are sad people out there that, don't get to have sex. I guess I shouldn't say sad like they're losers. I just mean, it makes them sad. Maybe they have major disabilities. Or maybe they're super awkward. To have the opportunity to just go see someone and get taken care of. Okay, so if there's two things that you potentially could get out of the fact that prostitution is legal, right? So it minimizes sex trafficking, human trafficking. One, that's a huge plus, obviously. Secondly, these people that ordinarily would find it difficult to organize getting out to see the prostitutes that are here now would get to go to an actual place, almost diagnosed by a psychologist, right? You could go talk to your psychiatrist or psychologist and they're like, I think the problem here is you're not having enough sex. You should go see somebody and they could take care of that. That's not a terrible idea. I don't know. That doesn't seem terrible to me. Let me know what you think. I don't think that is bad. I don't think that's bad at all. Greg his hair's thinning out, right? So Joe immediately brings up being bold. I love that. That was brilliant. It's way easier. It's way easier to just shave your head, right? You don't have to worry about everything. But then they get into if you have a weird shaped head. And that's something I'd never even considered. My older brother went bald at 23. I'm 37 and I've still got some hair. Even though my girlfriend likes to tell me constantly that it's thinning, I hold strong that it's a solid head of hair. But if I ever have to shave it, now I have to consider whether I have a weird-shaped head. I might do. I think it might be weird. You don't really know, right, till you get down there. I mean, a baseball hat sits on there okay, but there's some lumpy bits. Feel around. Feel around your own head. Figure out where you're at, because if you're going bald, you're going to want to know. But definitely don't try and get the implants. They don't have that shit down. It's not working, and a toupee is not going to fly. That's a terrible idea. I like that at one point during their podcast, Joe and Greg got onto the fact that they like taking care of people. They like helping people that need help. Joe said at one point he doesn't like to give up on people, right? We gotta help people figure things out, help them figure it out. Obviously, you don't want to hang out with losers. You don't want to hang out with super negative people that are like that all the time. But if one of your friends is going through a difficult time, that's when you want to be there for them. You want to help them because you already know the best of them. That's why they're your friend. And it's an interesting question because some people can really go off on the deep end. Some people can be, kind of chronically self-destructive. how much do you help and how much separation do you need? And I think that's a question that is going to come up and people should answer for themselves. You know, I want to be there always for my friends and people I love that need my help. But there also is like a tough love factor as well. Like Duncan Trussell lived at Joe Rogan's house for a while when he was going through a lot of things. And Duncan would like write in a journal every day, and he would use the float tank every day, and he really helped himself out and worked out of it. And that's the conclusion of what you need. Like when you go to help somebody, you expect them to put in maybe more work than you instead of just sitting there being sad. I really like that message. That was a great message, and it makes me think quite a lot about my friends, how I treat them, what difficult times they're going through, and also checking in with them, right? To check in and just be like, hey, dude, are you good? Like that one friend that you don't call very often because maybe they're a bit annoying or they complain a lot. Just to check in. It probably means a lot to them. Probably means a lot. They did talk about Tesla going out of business. I don't know if you guys have heard much about this, but the stock is struggling big time. Stock is falling, and I guess it doesn't look good. I don't know a lot about this. They can't go out of business? Are you kidding me? He might be the savior of mankind. And, not to mention, he's making fucking sweet Teslas. Those things are the shit. I mean, Joe talks about how sweet his car is. I've liked him since day one. My old roommate just bought one. He bought the smaller model and just can't get enough of it. He's like, this is amazing. No problems charging it. All over. I mean, he's in California, so I think they have a lot of charging stations, but absolutely loves it and has no real problems. If they go out of business, what other good electric cars are there? I don't know. I also don't know a lot about electric cars, so maybe there are lots, and I'm not sure. But I feel like Tesla's really, really up there. Also, if Tesla goes out of business, does it mean all the SpaceX stuff stops, or is it all different? It's probably all different companies. I don't know. So Greg has a Prius, and that's, as everybody knows, a pretty ridiculous car. I mean, it's just terrible. Unless you're an Uber driver, there's really no excuse to be driving a Prius. He has one. It's not even fully electric. Joe says, you know what? Fuck it. Go buy a Mustang. And they get into that. It's very funny. I don't think Greg is going to go buy one, but for a moment, he was 100% into it. And that's when Greg brought up a great story I'd never heard before about Joe, is that when Joe was younger and he went full on into comedy, he lost a lot of his money. He got his car repossessed, right? And I feel like these stories are important ones that Joe should talk about more, like the really difficult times that he's went through. Because you have to imagine, it really sucked for him to have his car repossessed in his early 20s. He didn't know that was going to happen. He didn't foresee the future and see that he was going to be a bowler like he is and this famous. I mean, he had to go through that and developed into this person. It's not like he hasn't made any mistakes, and it's not like he's had everything handed to him, right? He's been lucky in a lot of ways, but his hard work and that mantra that he gives is really important. What I love about the story is that he had installed his own car radio and he wanted it back. So he jumped the fence, got in, I guess not really broke into his car because he could just unlock it. He had the keys, but he just unlocks it and takes the stereo and gets out of there. I absolutely love that. I find that hilarious. That's very, very funny. They jump back onto comedy. Comedy as usual. Boston crowds. Boston crowds in the late 80s, early 90s. And they were brutal, right? They make you work hard, but they're great for developing like a new comic. If you can stick at it. I'm sure their dropout rate for comedy is higher than you would have in LA. People are kind of more supportive here. But in a way, if you want to create the best, you want to have the most stringent dropout rules. It makes sense, right? I mean, not everyone can play in the NBA. And doesn't it make sense to find out early on who should be in the NBA and who's not? Otherwise, people are just wasting the coach's time. It sounds brutal, but I love comedy, and I want the very best people to get through. You know, I want a lot of people to have give it a try and give it their best. But if you're not good, get the fuck out of there, right? I do some stand-up, and that's the same for me. If at any point I'm like, God, I suck at this. Like, I just cannot get past this point. You know, you need to know when to move on. And I would have loved to have seen those crowds back in, you know, the Boston days, you know, when Hicks was out there, Sam Kennison, Rogan, just all those guys, just like doing damage in the Boston scene. It must have been phenomenal. And then they talk about what it is. Getting on the Tonight Show is what it was all about, right? So no one can ever tell you to quit. They can't. That's your decision. Over time, you figure it out. And even George Carlin would say, no matter how bad you are, there's always one joke in your set he wished he had thought of. And those are the things that you will want to hang on to. And it's like bombing is always followed by a better set. Bombing is always followed by a better set. I love that Joe talked about Sebastian struggling early on, like struggling a lot, really struggling. Because you look at how big he is now, and I mean, he's unbelievable. Selling out Madison Square Garden, adding shows, unbelievable. He got so much better. He just kept working his craft, stuck at it, really hammered it in. And, you know, it almost brings me back to the Wiz Khalifa episode that was recently. I love that conversation because it was like some people go to the top of the mountain and some people just go halfway. It just has been resonating. I like that message. You know, I say it like it changes my life all that much. I don't know what it does, but it's nice to hear it. It's like positive and it's cool. And then Greg ends on a really happy note. Check out the end of that podcast. It's lovely. He just breaks it down to like happiness is not about all the shit you can buy and your money. It's related to community and be nice and take time with people that you care about. You know, he's talking about taking time with people at the Comedy Store that he knows, get there early, spend some time with them. I love that message. It's really cool. And another great podcast and a very funny one. Very funny one. Get high and listen to this. Like, that's what I advise for this one. You'll be laughing your ass off. You get a lot out of it. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much for subscribing and then downloading and putting up with me. I really appreciate it. And I always try to give my best and make it, you know, worth your 10 minutes. So, cheers.